and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Lara Trump here. I've just partnered with a great company to help you learn how gold and silver could help protect your savings. Their name is Goldco, and they're the real deal. Get your free gold and silver kit now at LaraLikesGold.com. Plus, you could get up to 10% in bonus silver. Check out LaraLikesGold.com. Tonight, we're joined by investigative reporter for the Post Millennial, Katie Daviscourt. Katie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. You've covered numerous protests in Portland and Seattle. I think we all are used to seeing kind of the chaos that ensues, but tell me about your experience. What's been the most eye-opening moments or things that you've witnessed during some of those events?
Yeah, right. Thanks for having me. Well, I think what's been the most eye-opening here is that left-wing political violence has gone unchecked in the Pacific Northwest for nearly a decade now. What happens often in both Portland and Seattle is that Democratic protests will end up being hijacked by Antifa networks who use extreme political violence to further their cause, which is to dismantle the United States from within. And it's why you would see otherwise peaceful protests normally turn into riots as these Antifa groups take over and start carrying out extreme acts of violence, whether that be smashing windows, setting fires, assaulting the men and women of law enforcement or anyone that they believe to be a threat to their cause. Now, Antifa has been committing crimes here in the Pacific Northwest with impunity, partly because they conceal their identities behind Black facial coverings, which makes it difficult for law enforcement to identify suspects. But you know what, Laura? Largely because Antifa is being supported and even endorsed by Democratic elected officials who are using this terrorist group as their own foot soldiers to further their cause against their political rivals. And so that's exactly what we're actually seeing right now down at the ICE facility in Portland, which I have been covering for about 4 months now since June. And it is an insurrection. It's a siege on the United States of America. And that is really what's going on here in the Pacific Northwest for the past decade.
I mean, you're right. It's been going on forever. And I think, sadly, it's kind of commonplace. And I think one of the most shocking things, Katie, to me is to hear people like Jimmy Kimmel out there say, Antifa doesn't really exist. Like, it's not a real thing. It's outrageous, right? It's laughable. It's crazy. I'm so grateful that we have a president and an administration who've designated Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, which is exactly what they are. As you said, they're attempting to kind of dismantle our country from the inside out. They are not allowing our law enforcement officers, our men and women who are out there every day putting their lives on the line to do their jobs, to protect this country, to enforce the law. And you got to be part of an Antifa roundtable with President Trump last week. So tell me a little bit about that experience. What was the conversation like? And you've been directly assaulted yourself. Is that right?
That's right. I'm still recovering from a black eye, and being invited to that roundtable, it was such an honor of a lifetime. And President Trump, he is the first person in a position of extreme power to actually recognize Antifa, say that they are not just an idea, they are a terrorist group. And I think, the people who have been suffering from this group in the Pacific Northwest really appreciate that. And that roundtable, it didn't just spark debate in the United States, but it gave all of us journalists who have been covering this group a world platform to share our stories. And now media, and it forced media to cover it because they were all staged behind the scenes. And now that they actually can't turn a blind eye to the violence, you heard reporter after reporter sharing their stories of being attacked, and media that they should be supporting the journalists on the ground who are being attacked, because Antifa will not just attack right-wingers, they attack anyone with a camera, because they consider cameras cops. So they will attack corporate press just as much as they attack, who they believe are conservative press. So I believe that it was a great discussion, all of us at the round table, and I'm excited to see what comes from it. Pam Bondi seems dedicated into going after this group, as is Kash Patel, and of course, President Trump. So I guess we're going to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I can't believe that you've had to suffer at the hands of all of this. And I mean, having experienced it firsthand, not just seeing it, Katie, but actually being assaulted by these people. What do you make of, like I said, Jimmy Kimmel saying, oh, it doesn't exist? Politicians, media personalities on the left kind of just downplaying it and saying, like, we're all crazy for talking about Antifa. What do you make of that? And the second part of my question is, President Trump has also talked about going after those who are funding these individuals. Because let's be honest, they're not existing just on their own in some sort of a vacuum. Someone out there is funding them. I go back to the quote unquote summer of love riots, and I think about even in New York City, how you would have these pallets of bricks just miraculously show up on street corners. Someone is paying for that, Katie. So, I mean, I find it outrageous that you have so many of these people who are just like, doesn't really exist. What's your response to that?
I find it absolutely insulting, and an idea didn't give me a black eye. An idea didn't give me a concussion. An idea didn't almost beat to death my colleague, Andy on the streets of Portland, who had to flee the United States because Antifa is trying to kill him here.
Oh my God.
It's awful. Antifa would go to his elderly parents' house, who are actually Vietnamese boat people, and intimidate them because they believe that Andy lived there. Just month after month of violence against us. And so you talk about the funding and the group, they're very decentralized. There's not one big funder. You can go to people like George Soros, who do fund in part through like the Tides Foundation, other organizations like that. But this group is largely funded by mutual aid groups. And so it's more difficult to pin down the funding because they crowdfund, and that's how they stay afloat. A lot of them don't have jobs. They're paid for by the taxpayers, who are, they're living off of government assistance. And so that's how they keep showing up.
Yeah, well, and also I think that like when you're talking about funding, anyone who is funding illegal domestic terrorist activity like this should be prosecuted as well in the same manner, because whoever you are, I get it. And by the way, you saying it's decentralized, that's the argument that a lot of folks in the mainstream media and on the left try to make. Well, you can't pin it down as one group, but we know what they are. We've seen them. And anyone who is perpetuating that and funding that and pushing that forward on the United States of America, quite frankly, should be charged as well and held to account, because it's sowing division and chaos. People are getting hurt. You've been hurt. I can't even believe that's horrible about Andy Ngo. I hate to hear that about his parents. How do you think the mainstream media's coverage of Antifa compares to what you've seen on the ground? Because again, it's just like, it seems like it's downplayed so much, but we know they exist, and we know that people are being hurt, and that law enforcement is being thwarted, and they're not able to do the job that, the American people expect them to do because of groups like this.
Yeah, well, they're not even reporting on Antifa. They're only starting to report on Antifa now because it's finally in a spotlight because of President Trump. And when they are reporting on it, it's completely inaccurate, and they're making fun of it, which is so beyond insulting to anyone who has experienced violence at their hands. They are lying. CNN, Aaron Burnett is lying, saying, Antifa is not a problem. It's just an imaginary, made-up thing. But then she immediately goes into right-wing political violence, which, where is it? It's
Yeah, where is that white? Where is that? What is she talking about?
It's basically non-existent. And you talk about January 6th, man, that was in the headlines for 4 years straight. But then you actually see a siege on the ICE facility night after night in Portland, where the men and women of law enforcement are being assaulted, having boulder rocks thrown at their faces, arson attacks, depredation of government property. And there is not a single mainstream media reporter out here on the ground reporting on the violence that is happening, because They shield left-wing violence because mainstream media is an arm of the Democratic Party, and they are using everything they can to make the right wing look bad and the left wing look like saints.
Yeah, and well, we know they've done it forever, and you know what? I give a lot of credit to my father-in-law for finally being the person to expose a lot of that, because it felt like, Katie, for so long, people were just kind of going on with life. You didn't really pay attention to politics that much. You didn't really understand that there was a slant by any means to, you know, whatever media source you were using to get your information, newspapers, television, what have you. President Trump, I think, was the one who finally like blew the doors off and started to expose all of this. And you're right, they seem on the left and within the mainstream media not to want to report on any of this because it does stem out of the left. I just keep going back to the difference in reaction to something horrific like Charlie Kirk's death by people on the right who held vigils, Katie, who showed up at church, who wanted to start Turning Point USA chapters in as many college campuses as they possibly could around the country, versus what happens on the left. And I'll go back again to the quote unquote Summer of Love riots, where you had the Chaz and the Chop zones in places like Portland and Seattle. When has anyone on the right ever done something as outrageous as that? I remember them burning down police precincts and smashing in cars, you know, police cars and the like. It's so different. It's so crazy to me that you can't just report it. And we all remember the famous video of the reporter who called it, that's where we get it. It's a mostly peaceful protest. Stuff's burning down behind the guy, of course. So it's just so crazy. But you know what? We do have a better outlet now in, I think, social media and alternative media sources like this show, where people are able to go out there, research something, get their own information. We do have an opportunity now, Katie, you know, you guys at the Post Millennial, to get the true information out there. And I'm hopeful that going forward, people are starting to realize that that's what you're going to have to do out there. You can't trust everything like you thought you once could. People need to seek out information on their own, and you guys are providing a lot of it as well. So I want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, and you mentioned social media. Social media is huge right now because the media landscape is changing. And so I wouldn't have a reporting platform if it weren't for social media, weren't for X, even Elon Musk purchasing X, you know, in 2020, actually, after I covered the Chaz, which was kind of my opening into reporting on extreme political violence and Antifa. I was banned from, you know, Instagram, Facebook, because they wanted to hide the truth of what's happening. And right now, there is a huge competing narrative wherein you have mainstream media and then on the ground independent reporters sharing raw footage of the truth of what is happening here in Portland, Seattle, with Antifa, with all of the riots. And so social media is the way forward because people are no longer believe mainstream media, because you can look at one thing that they're saying, look at the raw footage on the ground and say, and then you can question the narrative that is being put out by these fake news reporters. That's what they are, completely fake news. And so right now at ICE in Portland, we need all of the independent reporters on the ground because it's not being highlighted by mainstream media. Independent reporters are sharing what's going on. It's extreme political violence. It's an insurrection in the United States. It's a sustained attack on the United States. And people are actually tuning in to the truth, all because of social media.
Yeah, thank God. I mean, I'm so happy that people are starting to realize the reality of all of it. And again, thank you for what you guys are doing. Thank you for your reporting and putting yourself out there. I mean, my gosh, the fact that you were injured at the hands of some of these lunatics, I think is really crazy. I am, though, hopeful going forward, Katie, and maybe you got a sense of this when you were at that roundtable at the White House, that something is finally going to happen on this front. I think the fact that ICE, you know, our law enforcement entities here in the United States have to have backup and their own security from National Guard troops because of groups like Antifa, because people have been so poisoned to think that ICE is doing something wrong. They're following the law as it is written in the United States. And if anyone has a problem with that, they should go to the United States Congress and petition them to change the laws of the land as they exist right now. 100% the people of ICE are doing an amazing job of enforcing those laws. But because you have these rogue actors, because you have Antifa, because you have some of these people who want to cause problems, these ICE agents, the assaults we know are up 1,000%. They're getting doxxed, they're getting attacked out there, and they have to have support from the National Guard. And so I'm hopeful with the designation as a domestic terrorist group that we're going to see action, and hopefully you don't have to deal with the chaos and the nonsense you've had to deal with thus far. Are you hopeful going forward now with this president in office, with our attorney general, with our FBI director, that we're going to see a change that probably should have happened about a decade ago, but it's never too late to do the right thing, and this president believes in that?
Oh, absolutely. President Trump has the most perfect cabinet, I believe. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. I think Pam Bondi is going to do a great job. I know Kash Patel, he said he's going to be hunting down Antifa, calling them the domestic terrorists that they are. And it's only a matter of time when this group is gone for good.
Yeah. Not a day too soon. Well, listen, Katie, thank you for all you're doing out there. Where can people keep up with what you have going on? If they want to tune in to your social media, check out what's really going on the ground, et cetera, where can they find you?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on X at Katie Daviscourt. You guys can subscribe, but also go to the Post Millennial and Human Events and subscribe to us there too.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. Keep up the great work. Keep us informed as to what's really going on out there. And thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Lara.
The promises God made to Abraham, the covenants he established, the law that shows us his character, the prophets who spoke his words, the gospel that transformed the world. All of it, every bit, came through Israel. In standing with Israel, we celebrate our shared roots and the enduring legacy of God's work. When I support the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, I'm not just helping people in need. I'm honoring those who gave us our spiritual foundation. I'm saying thank you to the people who preserved God's word for us. The results speak for themselves. Lives transformed, families blessed, purposes fulfilled. And when you support Israel, you're not just changing their world, you're positioning yourself in God's flow of blessing. Discover the top reasons why Christians all over the world support Israel by visiting ifcj.org. That's ifcj.org. MyPillow is excited to announce they're having their biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back-in-stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88, any color, any style, and any size, even kings. The regular price is $119.98. Now they're only $29.88. And once they're gone for good. My towels are finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regularly priced at $69.98. Now only $39.98. And for the first and only time, get their limited edition premium My Pillows made with Giza cotton and a designer gusset. Queens $17.98, Kings only $19.98. Also, for a limited time, when your order is over $100, you get free shipping plus $100 in free digital gifts. So go to mypillow.com or call 800-839-8506 and use promo code TRUMP. Use your promo code for the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now. That's promo code TRUMP. We're joined by the author of Israel and Civilization and host of the Josh Hammer Show, Josh Hammer. Josh, welcome to the show. Before we get to the bulk of what I want to talk to you about today, I want to say congratulations because this week your show is actually joining Salem. I mean, I'm excited to have you as one of my colleagues. So welcome, and I guess give people an idea of what they can expect here on Salem from your show.
Yeah, Lara, great to join you. It's amazing to join the Salem family. So my show for the past 3.5 years has been with Newsweek, which is where I still work. So we signed a partnership agreement between Newsweek and Salem Media Group. So it's going to be part of the Salem Podcast Network, just the general Salem family. So look, my show is no nonsense. It's no nonsense, no filter. It's the truth just as I see it. I pull no punches. I'm not afraid. Get a lot of legal commentary, culture commentary, faith commentary. So subscribe to the Josh Hammer Show everywhere you get your podcasts.
I love it. Well, welcome to the team. We love to have you. And we love that. We like people who give it to us straight, because I feel like there's so much out there that gets misconstrued by the legacy media. And it's why people are turning, quite frankly, Josh, to podcasts, to alternative sources to get their information. So we love more good people out there giving it to us straight. Awesome stuff. This has really been a historic week, though. I think if you look at the way the world felt a year ago and you compare it to right now, if you look at the Middle East even a month ago, Josh, and look at what President Trump has been able to accomplish, give me, first of all, your feedback in what we saw happen over the weekend, Monday morning, seeing the hostages come home. What do you find to be the most significant accomplishment in President Trump's announcement last week, this Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal, all of it overall? Just give me your feedback.
Well, to me, the most remarkable achievement is probably the most obvious one, which is that the hostages had been released. I mean, this war has gone on for 2 years. That's a long time. I mean, this is the longest war that Israel has fought since Israel was refounded in 1948. I think many folks, frankly, if I'm being very candid with you, I probably count myself among them, who thought that the hostages were done. I mean, there was a major early on deal a month or two after October 7th. There was perhaps one more follow-on deal. But for this final batch of hostages, I think many of us thought that there was really no way that they would ever get out. But to the president's incredible credit, to his whole team's incredible credit, they meant what they said on the campaign trail. They meant what they said, which is that we are not forgetting about you, and we are going to leave no stone unturned to get these hostages out. So it is remarkable. Lara, I can tell you, back when I was in Israel in June, the last time I was there a few months ago, we actually were there when the whole war with Iran started. That's a whole nother story. But I was struck when I was there, just seeing the hostage photos everywhere, literally everywhere throughout the country, on the overpasses, on the highways, on the street lampposts, totally ubiquitous. And, you know, maybe it's because I'm an American, but as an American, I always thought the hostages, I don't want to sound callous, but I always thought of Hamas as being the real objective here. The hostages are kind of secondary, but I think the Israeli mentality is more sentimental, it's more personal, it's more up close. They really, really, really care about the hostages, and this is just an incredible, incredible achievement. Obviously, the president becoming the first U.S. president in 17 years to address the Knesset. It was a wonderful speech. I was smiling, I was laughing. The whole crowd there, frankly, seemed like they were smiling and laughing. It was just a tremendous cause for celebration this week during the holiday of Simchat Torah on the Jewish calendar, which is a very happy, joyous holiday. It's really quite fitting, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's as though it's just like divine in so many ways. And I really believe it. And look, you'll never get me to think anything other than President Trump was meant to be the president of the United States right now in this moment. Go back to Butler, Pennsylvania, and how his life was spared because he barely turned his head a certain way, Josh, right? We all know all of those things. What it took for this president to become president again, for all of the factors, all of the people to come together. You look at his team, you look at Steve Witkoff, you look at my brother-in-law, Jared Kushner, who really, I mean, look, he had a big role in the White House during the first administration. He's kind of like, you know what, he and Ivanka are doing their own thing, they're living their own life, but he cared so much about this because, look, it started with the Abraham Accords, right, back during Trump's first term as president, and he brought the right people together. His diplomacy, I think, I don't even know that we know the full extent of it, and it continues to strike me in such an interesting way because I think back to when all the people were hysterical about Donald Trump possibly having the nuclear codes, Josh, because he was going to start World War III, yet this is the 8th conflict we have seen during President Trump's second term resolved. Some of these conflicts, I mean, you say this one, obviously this specific war has gone on for 2 years, but in the Middle East, the idea of peace, this is thousands and thousands of years in the making. And for Donald Trump to be the one to do it, it just feels like it's so divine. Like God had a hand in all of this. And you'll never get me to think anything else. Just, you know, talk about the holiday right now, all of it. It feels like God's hand has been in this from the beginning.
Well, I'm a firm believer in that, for what it's worth. I am a firm believer that God's hand is in everything that happens on a day-to-day life, that God is in control of everything, and that and that he is overlooking these events and overlooking all of these events. So I firmly, unequivocally, absolutely do believe that. Lara, I wanted to just briefly talk, though, about what you said, this notion that they said that Donald Trump was going to be a warmonger. He was going to start World War III. I mean, we've heard this going back all the way as far back as the 2016 Republican presidential primary, right? You know, this president has been the most pro-peace president of my lifetime. I mean, he's probably been the most pro-peace president of anyone alive's lifetime. I mean, the 4 years when he was president the first time were actually relatively quite tranquil on the world stage, all things considered. The Chinese Communist Party was kept at bay. The Iranian nuclear threat was very much kept at bay. ISIS was defeated and so forth there. And as you alluded to, I mean, just thus far in this first year, I mean, Thailand and Cambodia, India and Pakistan. I mean, India and Pakistan, two nuclear countries. I mean, that
people started getting crazy. Remember when that was happening? The people were like, "Oh, this is it. This is the big one." And then President Trump made a couple of phone calls, and he's like, "No, we're done with this."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Rwanda and the Congo and sub-Saharan Africa, a really, really bloody conflict. Armenia and Azerbaijan. I was actually there in Armenia 2 years ago. I went to the Azeri border. I actually saw that conflict up close and personal. It was really, really bitter. They've had numerous wars going back 3.5, 4 decades. The notion that could be ended essentially overnight, and it was almost under the radar. It was almost unheralded. You had the leaders of both countries, Azerbaijan and Armenia, they're clinking their champagne glasses, saying, "Here's to you, President Trump." I mean, my God. I mean, like, again, like, because the Middle East stuff, Russia, Ukraine, that gets the headlines. That particular conflict just flew so far under the radar, but obviously the hostages being released here, it's just an incredible pro-peace through strength track record. And I think in particular, because you also mentioned the Abraham Accords, when it comes to the Middle East in particular, you know, Donald Trump's approach to the Middle East is that America's national interest is served when our allies are stronger and our enemies are weaker. It's a very simple way of thinking. It is in stark contrast to the Barack Obama, Joe Biden Democratic Party way of thinking, which that America's interest is served when our allies are weaker and our enemies are stronger. That's the mentality that led to the Iran nuclear deal back in 2015 and things like that. But this president has a very, very sober view of the Middle East. He understands that peace happens when our allies are in a stronger position to secure their interests and then, by extension, America's interests. That's exactly what led to the Abraham Accords. The reason that you have these non-Islamist moderate Arab states, the UAE, Bahrain, and so forth, come make peace with Israel, the reason, God willing, we'll see more peace deals like that in the next 2-3 years that come, is because this president stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel. It's not because he is trying to alienate Israel. It's not because he's trying to create daylight between the U.S. and Israel, as Barack Obama once infamously said. No, he understands that it's not just Israel's interest that is served by being a strong Israel. America's interest is served by being a strong Israel. That's a definition of an ally, and President Trump gets that with every fiber of his being.
Yeah, and I think it's so amazing, too, just to go back to everybody saying, like, he was going to be this warmonger and all of these things. They also criticized him, you know, for not having any foreign policy experience, for saying, you know, what does Donald Trump know about any of this? Well, maybe it's time we got a fresh set of eyes on things. Maybe the old way of appeasement, Josh, wasn't working so well. And you just pointed out Biden, Obama, all of these people. And by the way, a lot of people in, you know, the conservative side of the aisle as well had the same way they operated, and it never seemed to work. You could never have gotten to this point. I think to have someone come in who had a fresh set of eyes, you know, they say doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity. It kind of feels like that's what we were trying to do, especially in this part of the world for so long from the United States. And Donald Trump comes in and he says, you know what? We're not doing it that way anymore. I'm a businessman. I've negotiated a lot of deals my whole life. I think I can be successful here. And he didn't put the people in that a lot of folks would have said, oh, you have to have these people with all of this foreign policy experience. And he said, you know what I'm going to put in there? I'm going to put Steve Witkoff in, a businessman from New York. I'm going to put my son-in-law, Jared Kushner, in, also a businessman from New York. But it's because I think there was a different approach. We saw something totally different in this president. The strength, I agree with you, the standing side by side with Israel and saying there will be no daylight here is such a power move. And people start to respect it. So a lot of people, I feel like, are eating crow. I know that Donald Trump has not gotten direct credit from Obama. I know he's had some positive things to say. I think Hillary Clinton gave him a little bit of credit. But for all those people out there who said Donald Trump is not the person who's going to be able to negotiate anything on America's behalf, I think maybe what we've learned, Josh, is that sometimes it's good to do things differently. Sometimes the old system is broken.
Yeah, I mean, what about the ceasefire now crowd, by the way? I mean, what about all the keffiyeh-clad crazies that are protesting, on Capitol Hill, in downtown New York City, the streets of Manhattan, Chicago, L.A.? I mean, where are they? I mean, Rashida Tlaib, if she actually takes seriously her proclamation that there should be a ceasefire tomorrow, she should be on her hands and knees, thanking Donald Trump for accomplishing what no one prior to him was able to do there. But, the hypocrisy, frankly, is just utterly galling. But you're totally right. This president's approach to really foreign policy in general, but I would say maybe above all to this very specific Israeli-Palestinian conflict is extremely different, not just from the Democrats that preceded him, but very much also the Republicans that preceded him. Now, I think a lot, Lara, about the second Bush administration from 2005 to 2009. So President George W. Bush comes into power. He defeats John Kerry in 2004. His inaugural address in 2005 is his proclamation of the so-called Freedom Agenda, where he basically says that everyone throughout the world aspires to the same conception of individual liberty and dignity, basically Western Enlightenment liberalism, and we're going to help you achieve it. Now, that's a nice abstract thought. It's not good when you try to forcibly export it overseas, but the problem is that the Bush administration, a lot of Republican thinkers around that time more generally, sought to export this to the Middle East and try to carve out Western-style nation-states, very much including in Ramallah with the Palestinian Arabs. In fact, Condoleezza Rice, well into the Bush second term, was really trying quite hard to craft a Palestinian Arab state. I think the beauty of President Trump when it comes to foreign policy, because his approach is very much my own, is that he doesn't approach foreign policy through these ideological abstractions. He's not thinking about universal conceptions of Thomas Jefferson, John Locke. No, he approaches foreign policy through a singular prism, which is what serves the American national interest. That is the correct way to view foreign policy. That is a sober way. I would argue that is the actually conservative way to view American foreign policy there.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the Palestinian or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, he understands that the American national interest is served when America stands with Israel, and that America's interest in the Middle East more generally when it comes to subduing, deterring radical Islamic jihad, when it comes to securing very important international waterways like the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz. All of this is served when America stands with Israel, which he reiterated in very fulsome, colorful, and highly entertaining fashion, I might say, at the Knesset this past Monday. It was quintessential Trumpian fare, and I very much loved it.
I also loved when he talked about the fact that you had a lot of, the countries in the Middle East with a lot of money coming in, and they were going to help kind of rebuild things. And the beautiful part about that, and the smart part about that, Josh, is that then they have an interest in keeping things peaceful there and ensuring that region of the world actually does flourish and come back, and they don't want to see more destruction in that part of the world. It's just, there's so much of this that I think was so smart. And again, I can't give enough credit to my father-in-law, to my brother-in-law, to Steve Woodcock, to Marco Rubio. I mean, really an incredible team that they put together in order to make this happen. And the foresight, it wasn't just like, let's stop this now. It's let's stop this and then let's get people bought in so that this is a long-term situation here, so that everybody in this part of the world has a little skin in the game, and they have a stake in this, and they want to see this continue. I thought it was really brilliant. One of the things I love that you point out where all these people who were protesting. There are still some people, though, protesting. It doesn't matter what this president does. It kind of has felt like the Democrats were hoping to energize their voters in the upcoming election with this war going on. Now that this has ended, where do they go from here, Josh? What do you think they're going to, what's going to be their response? What's going to be their play?
It's a great question. They have been really focused on this conflict. A lot of them were actually. Some of these folks were so far out there they were calling Joe Biden Genocide Joe, but they've definitely they've definitely doubled down, frankly, when it comes to this administration, because this administration stands shoulder to shoulder so much with Donald Trump. It's not entirely clear, Lara, where they go. They could. They're going to run out of wiggle room to try to call President Trump a Putin-Moscow puppet, because in recent months, President Trump has been extremely harsh, actually, on Vladimir Putin. So that playbook's not going to work there. I don't really know. This is a guy who's literally making peace deals in every corner of the globe. If you actually value peace, and once upon a time, the left, Lara, was the party of at least purported peace. They owned that.
Yeah, they staked their whole claim on that, and now look at them.
They were the hippies. They were the peaceniks. I mean, they were the party of the Vietnam War protests at Kent State University in 1968. George McGovern, for God's sake, 1972, got totally blown out by Richard Nixon, but a total peacenik. I mean, that was their brand. That was their MO. And now they've become. I don't even know what they are. I mean, they're allegedly not the party of war in the Middle East, but now there's a massive ceasefire, and they're found virtually nowhere to applaud. They've very much been the party of perpetual war when it comes to Eastern Europe, which is fascinating. The Russia-Ukraine war is like the one war that Democrats purportedly support. I have thoughts on why that is. I think a lot of it has to do with the psychology of the Russiagate hoax, the Russia collusion delusion. A lot of them they really think to this day that President Trump is a Manchurian candidate of Vladimir Putin there. I think that's probably why a lot of them are so gung-ho on the Ukrainian cause. But as far as where they go to try to rise up against Donald Trump, I don't even know, because they're running out of wiggle room. Again, he's making peace deals all across the world.
Not only that, but it's funny because you look here at home and it seems like obviously they're so against anything that the president does. Shutting down the border. We have the lowest border crossings in history. Another campaign trail promise that has been made and met by this president. You look at the deportations, getting the criminals, the gangs, the drug dealers out of this country. President Trump is executing that. You have GDP up, you have inflation down, you have all of these promises and positive things for the American people. And it feels like, whenever you have Democrats, people who are supposed to be representatives of their constituents around the country, who are saying, no, we don't want safer cities in Chicago. We don't want safer cities in Portland or LA or DC. It seems like everything that this president is doing, no matter how good it is for the American people or the world, they're going to fight against it. And, I don't think they know who they are. I don't know that they find their way back in time for the midterms or maybe even for 2028. It seems like right now they're sort of held hostage by the radicals in their party. And that's not a good place for them to be. I don't know that they get back from that.
No, they're on the wrong side of virtually every 80-20 issue. They're on the wrong side of deporting Hamas sycophants like Mahmoud Khalil, Mahmoud Khalil, yes, I was blanking on his name. They're on the wrong side of deporting Mahmoud Khalil. They're on the wrong side of deporting MS-13 people like Kilmar or Abrego Garcia. They're on the wrong side, obviously, of the transgender issue. They're on the wrong side of political violence. Abigail Spanberger in the Virginia gubernatorial debate the other night could not bring herself to actually condemn these horrific texts from Jay Jones, the Attorney General nominee, calling for political violence against opponents there. So they're on the wrong side of virtually every 80-20 issue. Lara, I think a lot about this ancient quote from Sun Tzu. I promise I'll make it relevant again. So Sun Tzu was this ancient Chinese strategist from 2.5 millennia ago. This is back in the time of the Great Wall of China, whatever. So he had this wonderful quote that I first heard a long time ago from Ted Cruz, and it always stuck with me. And Sun Tzu has this line where he says that a battle is won before it is fought, because it is won by choosing the terrain on which it is fought. One of the things that I have to say I have always most admired about your father-in-law when it comes to his political instincts is that he has mastered the art of the 80-20 issue. He has mastered the art of delightfully trolling his political opponents into being forced into the corner of defending the rabid 20%. So just to take one example, the recent executive order on flag burning there, what does that have the obvious effect of doing? It makes Democrats defend flag burning. Guess what?
Right.
That's not a popular stance at all. So, I think that President Trump has incredible instincts on this there. The Democrats are on the wrong side, again, of virtually all these 820 issues. Immigration and transgenderism definitely stand out. They have learned precisely zero lessons that I can tell from the 2024 election. I think that they're in for a shellacking in 2026, and at this rate, probably in 2028 as well.
Well, we won't be so sad about that if that happens. I wish that we had a party in the United States that is the opposite the Republican Party that was a little bit sane, Josh, that we could kind of debate back and forth and keep it civil, and maybe we could come to, some kind of a semblance of unity on things. It seems like they're just so far gone at this point. It's sad to say, but let me ask you about this. You did bring up political violence. You're right. I could not believe that Abigail Spanberger couldn't bring herself to say it's a disqualifying thing to wish, death and murder upon a Republican colleague. But that's sort of where the Democrats have fallen. And we saw a great friend of ours, Charlie Kirk, obviously assassinated in cold blood in this horrific manner just over a month ago. And I think it's still shaken so many of us. I want to ask you, though, because there are some people out there who have accused you of somehow being part of all of this. I can't imagine something more awful than an accusation like that, but let me just get your response to that, because I have to imagine you have some feelings on it.
Yeah, Lara, I obviously do. I mean, Charlie was a good friend of mine, first of all. We talked virtually every day for the final year and a half or so of his life. We talked literally the night before he was killed, actually. We strategized all the time about Jewish-Christian alliance, U.S.-Israel relations, fighting anti-Semitism. He was passionate about all these things, and he was just an incredible tight-end, a loyal personal friend, and he will be missed. So, Lara, this past week I was off for the Jewish holiday, and I turned my phone back on after it, and I did see that Candace Owens had wink, wink, nudge, nudge, heavily implied that I had foreknowledge or outright complicity in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I mean, what does one even say to this, Lara? I mean, I'm a lawyer by background. I clerk for a federal appeals judge. This is likely defamatory stuff. I'm talking with lawyers. It's quite possible there will be a lawsuit. We shall see. I mean, it's beneath contempt. It is deranged. It is lunatic behavior. It's satanic. It's just evil. I mean, this stuff has real, tangible consequences, right? I mean, I have a wife. I have a young daughter. This sort of stuff, puts me and my family in a very vulnerable position there. So I've been on the phone with all sorts of law enforcement folks, 24/7, security consultants. It's just sick, twisted, horrific stuff. It's obviously coming from a profound place of anti-Semitism, because the problem for Candace Owens, the reason that she's picking on me here, is because I wear a kippah. I wrote a book on the Jews in the Western civilization. I'm a proud, publicly conspicuous Jew. I think it complicates the narrative for Candace Owens and others like her that Charlie was so close to Jews like me. They are trying to define his legacy. They're trying to revise it and to pretend like he was something other than what he was, which was a champion of Jewish-Christian relations, a champion of Western civilization more generally, a champion of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. Charlie literally turned his phone off when religious Jews like myself turn our phone off for our Sabbath. He loved the Hebrew Bible. He used to study Torah with Dennis Prager, for goodness sake. So this whole information operation that Candace and others are trying to do to pretend that he was something other than what he is, that their narrative has no role in it for myself as a publicly Jewish person being close friends with Charlie, which I was. Therefore, that narrative has to die. As I said, the result is that there was a lot of likely defamatory stuff said, and we may well sue. We'll see.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry you're having to deal with that, and for your family as well. No one knows more so than our family what it feels like to feel targeted and, in that manner. It's very unsettling and very upsetting. So wishing the best for you. Again, listen, welcome to Salem. Welcome to our podcast space here. We're excited to have you. Josh Hammer, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We really appreciate it, and best of luck with everything you got going on.
God bless you, Lara. Thank you.
All right. To everybody at home, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. We'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View. That was so great, Josh. Thank you.
And I won't back